There we go. Okay, we're officially recording. Okay, so hello, welcome back everybody. Welcome back to Unzipped. I have no idea what episode this is going to be. Usually I come in and I'm like, yeah, episode 3. And I'm like, you know what? Now it's like, we're just on an episode.
That's right.
So for people that are just tuning in, if you've never seen the show before, Unzipped is essentially featured. So I run ZippyContent. ZippyContent, what we do is we represent authors, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, people, etc. in that realm. And we find them interviews on podcasts. So we have a huge network of podcasters that we work with regularly. I think it's about to hit 700 podcasters in our network. Wow. So it's big. And so really I'm featuring the ones that we have like really strong relationships with, that we send a lot of guests to their shows, and I want to expose our network to everybody. You know what I mean? I'm constantly just like blown away by the people that we're working with. And I just want to show people like, look at how cool this is. So thank you for being on the show, Kyle. Welcome. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your show. Give me the name, just fill me in.
Yeah, so we started as the Business Playmakers podcast, and Business Playmakers was originally designed as a way to connect our audience to entrepreneurs and business people that have kind of been through, just to share their journey and share their experience, but to do so with people that are relatable and that are kind of attainable, people that you can actually connect with. And then over time that has sort of evolved. And so we're actually going through a process, and we're really close to finalizing the rebranding of the podcast to the Employer Blueprint podcast. And our focus has really become focused on like team building, company culture, scaling companies, and things like that. So, we get a chance to bring in authors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to share kind of how they've done the things that they're doing.
Awesome. That's awesome. So tell me in the audience a little bit about who you were before you decided to start a podcast, and kind of what led you into thinking that it was a good idea.
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I've owned businesses for the last about 8 years now. And so really how the podcasting concept came up to me was I enjoy podcasts. I like to listen to podcasts a lot. And one of the things that I was finding is, of course, I love listening to business-based podcasts, but so oftentimes the people that I was hearing were people that were really sort of unapproachable. You'd hear about these, billionaire CEOs and things like this, and it wasn't people that I could really relate to as well. And so the idea came to me that, what if we were able to do a show that was just more relatable? And so I had the idea of doing a podcast, and it kind of every year it went on my to-do list for the year. Like, this is the year I'm going to start a podcast. And I did that for 3 years. And finally, in the third year, I said, okay, this is the last year. If I don't start it this year, then I'm removing it from my list, and it's, I'm going to get over it. And so I continue to own my businesses, and that's really kind of the core and the root of who I am. Own a recruiting business and talent acquisition. I also do leadership and management coaching. And so the podcast has really been a great tool for that, because of some of the people I've been able to connect with that are also in that space. But that's how the podcast came about. Was just I wanted to be able to share the same information that I wanted, but in a more relatable format.
Definitely. You led right into my next question perfectly. So tell me about some of the connections that have come from it. I mean, new clients, any partnerships, anything like that?
Yeah, it's really been incredible. When I started the show, I really wanted to do it just simply as a way to give information. So I love resources and kind of sharing information and vlogs and blogs and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, the podcast is another great way to just share information with people.
Yeah.
And very quickly I realized how much I was gaining from it. And just because, I've had an opportunity to speak to some really incredible people from all over the world, really. And in fact, I've even
Right.
recorded shows when I've been in other countries, and then I've talked to people that are in other countries. And but
Right.
yeah, I've met best-selling authors. I've talked to leading coaches and consultants from around the world, and some of the people that I've had an opportunity to meet and stay connected to just through the podcast are things that I don't think I would have ever been able to do that. That now I have people even that I can reach out to directly and say, hey, I remember we talked about this. Do you have some information you can share and help with? And it's really sort of become a community within itself, which is really, really impressive to see in even just a short period of time. And I think we're only, we're only a couple years into our show. So to be able to do that is really incredible, and just to meet some amazing people.
I love it. I mean, the podcasting industry is like you've been saying, is just incredible. It's filled with just the coolest people ever, because they're not just, podcasting is like something that they do, but that's not who they are. They've got all kinds of stuff going on. Right. You know what I mean? So I agree. It's incredible seeing the people that you're able to meet and kind of build a connection with just because of this amazing platform. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
That's great. So, okay. So tell me some of the results that have come from your show. I mean, business growth, anything like that?
Yeah. So I think, one of the big things for me is it's a great way. So I don't like sitting down and writing, but I love sharing information and sharing knowledge. And I think for me, one of the big things that it's helped us with is it's helped even sometimes create content that we're able to share with clients and share with our database. But the other thing is that just through some of the connections that we've been able to make, it's added credibility and expertise to who we are, the contacts that we have, and the way that we are able to help. So, one of the businesses that I have is specifically around recruiting and talent acquisition. And then even in the leadership and coaching stuff that I'm doing, when I have an opportunity to connect with and build a relationship with someone that's a best-selling author on team building, it adds so much credibility and expertise to what I'm doing whenever I'm talking to a client or a prospect. And it's not just me saying, hey, I've got this idea or I've read this book. There's a friend of mine that had written this book. You may have heard of him. This is who it is. And this is the information that he was able to share. I'll tell you what, if you'd like, I can get you connected. And so the way that that's helped build credibility and expertise in our business and sort of my brand and who we are, that's been really incredible. And again, connections that otherwise I don't think I would have ever been able to make.
Yeah, definitely. And it's amazing how just interviewing somebody, you're able to kind of leverage each other's expertise and kind of, you know what I mean? It's just more credibility when you have these like professional associations. Yeah. Through a podcast, you know what I mean? It goes the same way for being a guest on shows. You know what I mean? It's the same type of thing that, I was interviewed here and I was interviewed here, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I love that. That's a really huge part of it for sure. Yeah. So, give everybody some pointers if they're wanting to get started in the podcasting industry, if they want to start a podcast, if they want to be a guest on podcast, what are some ways that they can really prepare?
Well, I think, so admittedly, and I'll give you a plug on this, Courtney, I think, for me, one of the best things I've done in receiving guests is having people like you. Whenever you're reaching out and you're sharing that information, it really helps kind of that initial vetting process that I would have to go through. And I know early on when I started the show, and again, understanding this is not my full-time gig. And so when I started the show, I was spending a lot of time just trying to get guests and reach out to people and talk. And there was a lot of time involved in that. And so for me, it's really been great when you're reaching out and you're saying, hey, here's some information about this person. And here's their one sheet, here's some information, here's their area of expertise. So for someone that's wanting to get into being a guest, I would definitely recommend, talking to a company like yours to say, how can you get me in the right place? Because I can tell you as someone that is the host, that it's so much easier. It's so much easier. So as a guest, for them to not have to spin their wheels doing that, and for you to make those connections is really beneficial. And for those that
I
are,
appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. It's huge for me because now I spend so little time on that piece of the podcast. Awesome. And then the thing that is, for someone that's wanting to get into podcasting, there's so many resources and tools out there. And I actually had a guest on the show not that long ago who has written a couple of books specifically on podcasting. And so I went through and kind of checked them out as he was going to be on. And I think what I wish I would have done is connect with someone that already had a podcast, because I started from scratch, and there was no one in my geographic area that had a podcast. And so I was trying to reach out to, I was reading books and watching videos and listening to podcasts about podcasting. And so I made a lot of mistakes early on that could have been avoided, and that really would have simplified. So I think one of the things that I typically advise people now, because I get this question a lot, people are saying, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What should I do? And I usually say, well, let's just sit down and talk before you do, because in the 30 minutes, I can give you a lot of the information you would need. But so that's one piece, is just find somebody that's already done it and get advice from them. But then the other thing, really to be a little more kind of technical on it, sound. And I think that's one of the big lessons that I learned early on is I spent a lot of money for a zero budget podcast on some sound equipment, microphones and things like that didn't give me what I really needed. And so
I see.
That's one of the things that I got as early feedback is people, said content's good, but it doesn't sound that good. And so it's not something I really want to listen to in the car. And so
that's huge. Yeah, that's definitely huge.
And it's so easy these days. I mean, even, your Apple headphones, I mean, the microphone on that, I bet half of my guests, that's what they're using, and it's fine.
Yeah, but, they are. I can tell you. They definitely are.
and those things are absolutely fine, but it's something to keep in mind whenever you're starting a podcast. I think that a lot of people think that, that in order to start they've got to have some professional studio and they've got to have $1,000 worth of equipment, and you really don't. You just have to be intentional about what you do have and what you're using. And so,
that's smart for sure.
That's something that I would recommend. But get with people, and I'd be happy to talk to people about that. But get with people that have already done it and just say, all right, I want to start it. I want to start it on the cheap. What do I need to do?
Yep.
And in 30 minutes, you can figure out everything you need to know.
Definitely. Have you ever considered or thought of maybe like a podcast production company that kind of comes in and helps you with that side of things? Did you ever consider that?
Yes, I have. And I am absolutely open to anybody that wants to come on board to do that. So
nice. I've got a lot of people that I work with that do that. So nice plug for them. If they're interested, maybe they should hit you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. So I'm in a very, very advantageous situation. So what happened with me is when I started my show, I had a marketing guy on staff who really kind of helped through that whole process. And then I helped him launch his own business. And so he now runs his own marketing company. And as part of that, he actually he produces my show. And nice. So my part of the show really is like recording it and then sending it over to him. And,
I love it.
And so, he and I, yes, we absolutely are open, and we have even a model set up that we can help people do that. So if you're saying I'd like to start a show, but all I want to do is record and everything else is too much time, we can help them get set up, get them started, and then they're just sending audio files and everything else gets done. So yes, we actually, we have the production capabilities to do that.
I love it. That's great. And I just want to add the beginning of your answer to this question when you were mentioning having somebody send you guests. Hearing that makes me so happy, because when I first started doing this, I was honestly really nervous about how podcasters were going to accept me into their community. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, okay, how, what is this that I'm like going out there and like charging other people to like charging them to be on somebody else's show? You know what I mean? Like, how are people going to receive me? I was honestly expecting kind of some some negative backlash when it came to, you know, like, cause I just didn't even know, So now being a couple of years in and having such a strong network of people who totally know what we're doing, and having so much support means so much, because I was just so nervous about it in the beginning. So it's so great to be received this way. And I don't even have a podcast, and like being a part of the podcasting community, like it makes me super happy.
Well, I can tell you from the host perspective, here's what happens. And I get guest requests now almost daily. I probably have a pipeline right now of about 75 guests that have requested to be on the show. And I typically will give a little more kind of credit to those that have gone through you or gone through a PR company of some kind than I will that those that reach out directly. And the reason being because I know that they truly they're being intentional about it, and they are investing in their desire to get out there and share their story. And if they have someone can just reach out and say, hey, can I be on your show? And they get on and they really haven't planned or prepared. They don't really know what they don't really know what they're talking about. But if someone's going to invest in it financially, then that tells me they don't want to come on and sound like an idiot. And so if I'm going to put that in front of my audience, I want to make sure that they really, that they know what they're talking about, and that they've kind of planned, they have a little bit of structure around what they are speaking of. And so that's why, for me to be able to have someone that's saying, here's some information about them, here's areas of their expertise, and they are investing in that through you, then that tells me that they're going to be a good guest. I know that going into it.
I love that.
So it's so much simpler. Yeah. And my vetting becomes much lower. I mean, there have been times with you, Courtney, especially where, as soon as you send something, I can send it back and say, yeah, let's have them on. But by being able to look through it and say, oh, these are the areas. Yeah, this matches into my audience. Simple. It takes an hour out of my time of trying to vet someone through and really figure it out. And so, for those of you that don't know, if you're looking at getting into that space, Courtney even puts links to the other areas, so I can go out and I can research these people in 5 or 10 minutes.
We're really intentional about that, making it really easy for you to know who they are, what they can talk to your audience about, and how to find out more information about them. Yeah.
And that is huge as a host. And again, most podcast hosts, we're not doing this as a full-time job. I mean, these are not money makers necessarily. And so, so to limit that amount of time and already had it vetted out. Yeah, it is a tremendous benefit to us as hosts.
That's great. I love to hear that. Okay. So give the audience some pointers in terms of what they can have dialed in on the back end to get a good return on having a podcast or being a guest. Like what would you recommend? I mean, some people obviously have books. Oh my gosh, my dog. Some people have books. Some people have courses. You know what I mean? So what are some things that people can keep in mind to kind of just make sure that they're able to do something with the traffic that they are initially pulling in from these interviews?
Yeah. So if you are going on a show to generate revenue of some kind, the one thing that I recommend, which is oftentimes counterintuitive, is don't go on the show to sell. Go on the show to build credibility.
Thank you.
And I don't have to worry about this. I will, again, I'll give you credit here, Courtney. I don't have to worry about this with your guests, but that's something that I used to let people know very early on is when you come on the show, if it becomes too salesy, the show will not get aired. And so it's a bit counterintuitive because you're thinking, well, I've got this new book, or I've got this download that I want people to get that I can, or I've got this, whatever it is, I've got this master class, and I want to sell it. But the whole purpose of this format is to build credibility and expertise, and understanding that people are listening to this at the gym, they're listening to it in the car. They're not listening to it to be sold. They're listening to it to get good information, to invest in themselves. And so you've got to go into it that mindset. But then the other thing is, whatever it is that you are pitching, and if you're doing it to generate revenue, you have to have some sort of pitch. Whatever it is that you are pitching, make sure that it is well aligned with, you've got to be an expert in your space. So
Yes.
you can't go on a show and talk about one thing, and let's say it's about team building and you talk about one aspect of team building, and then someone downloads your information or goes and checks out your website and it's misaligned. Um,
Yes.
and so make sure that, when you go on, you are truly an expert in your space, and use that expertise to share. And it's all about being able to share information with others. And then if they want more, they'll get more. But I think if we can go to that mindset, that giver's gain mindset, that I'm just here to share the knowledge that I have in my head with other people, that's the best way to get someone to actually say, wait a second, I need more than what they've just given me already.
Exactly. Samantha, my operations manager, put it really just eloquently recently, and I love how she said it. She was telling one of our clients that we kind of were having this problem where it was very salesy, and so she told them that the last thing that you want to go do is just plug your business.
Right.
What you need to do is just go on and tell your story and cause the person who's listening to kind of self-assess and realize that they need you. You know what I mean? Like it's so organic when it happens that way. You know what I mean? And it's so much. Yeah. So you said it perfectly.
Well, and that's it right there, is you're there to tell a story, and that story, maybe led with questions. That story maybe because they've just said, hey, tell us about yourself or whatever. But you're there to share that information. And if you can share that information, people will put themselves into your story. People will realize that I'm that character. I'm the one they're talking about that has that challenge, and I want to know more. And so that's where you're going to get the traffic back. But it will turn people off very quickly, both the host and the audience. If you come on and you're just trying to plug what you have, it's not beneficial. And as a host, I owe it to my audience to make sure that they are getting good quality content. And that's why I tell people, your show will not air if this comes across too salesy. So.
And I love that. I love that you're strict with that, and that you don't just like air everything that you record. Cause it's like, okay, I won't mention any names. I had a client recently who, we thought he was going to do great when we initially spoke to him. And then when we started actually like booking him for podcasts, he had this like interview flow that he was giving the podcasters about how he wanted the show to go. And we were like, are you serious? Like, this is so crazy. Like, there's no way. And it was just, this person's show. And it wasn't the podcaster's show. He was trying to completely take over the show. And, so you got to have this stuff in mind. I mean, definitely. Oh my gosh. Back up. Stop it. She's got so much energy right now. But yeah, so what about on the technical side? Like, what do you recommend having? And also, promotion after it goes live. Like, what do you recommend just in terms of, is there any programs that they should be using, or any like marketing techniques or anything like that you recommend?
Yeah, so we're still pretty simple. We are I think we are getting ready to record our 100th episode. And so I think we just released 82 or 84 this week. So even with that, and I say that to say this, we still are using good old-fashioned GarageBand. And it works incredibly well. In fact, the producer, he's got he's got better software than that, but I still plug everything into GarageBand. I send it to him, and he's got the presets and he's got everything. So we still do it all in GarageBand. Nice. I think one of the things that I do recommend on the technical side is, we use professionally done music and voiceover for our introduction and our outro, which I think is really good just to add a level of professionalism to the show. So that's something that I generally would recommend. And yes, there is a little bit of investment to that. But again, it just kind of depends on what the outcome of the show is, the purpose of the show.
Exactly. Where it's going to stimulate growth is the most.
Yeah. And of course it depends on the audience too. My audience is business people. So that level of professionalism is really important to us. But on the back end, I think once it's done, the biggest thing that I would recommend from on the back end piece of that, once the show's complete, is put it everywhere, so iTunes still obviously has the majority of podcasters out there. And so most people are still listening via iTunes, but put it everywhere, because you just never know. And you never want someone to say, oh, I'd love to listen to your show, but I don't have an iPhone. And so
I couldn't agree more.
so it's, a smaller percentage of our listeners are on other platforms, but the fact that they are there is a reminder that we need to be anywhere and everywhere. And then from the marketing perspective, and I don't know that we do really a great job of this, admittedly, but one thing that we do is when our show gets uploaded, it not only uploads to iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play and iHeartRadio and everywhere else, but it also gets uploaded to my personal LinkedIn profile. It gets uploaded to a Facebook page. It gets uploaded to where else is it? It might be. I think there's even a link from Twitter. So we put the show everywhere that we possibly can. And then the other thing that I think is really big for marketing is make sure that your guests are aware. And so one of the things that we try to do is I connect with my guests, generally via LinkedIn. Again, professional, we're looking more on the business side. And so, but whether it's LinkedIn or through Facebook, whatever, I'll go in and we'll usually just kind of tag them and just say thanks, because now their audience is aware. And that's the whole point, is they want more people to know who they are and where they can get information from them. So anything you can do to help benefit your guest is obviously a great thing. And then just marketing that on the back end to make sure, just put it out everywhere. I mean, you want it everywhere so people can get to it.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly what I tell my clients when we start doing this. I'm like, okay, so you also need to think about how you're going to promote it when you're done. Have a conversation with your podcaster. Come, what I mean? Both of you guys can blast it. And I was like, I mean, every podcasters are in it just as much as the guests are for visibility and leveraging each other's audiences. And you know what I mean? So I always tell them that, your podcaster will appreciate anything that you do in terms of marketing your interview. Send it out to your email list, put it on your website, put it on all of your social media channels. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's like. It's really important to do that. I mean, I've had people that are like, well, the best part about this is that you don't need to do anything. And it's like, no, you do need to do things.
You do.
You do. You can't just go out there and, you're not going to get as many results that you're looking for if you don't put everything you have into it. You're obviously making an investment of time, most of the time money, you know what I mean? So, and other people's time as well, so it's really important that you go all in and you make sure that you share it. And I always tell people to make sure that you share it in a way that it's easy also to opt in to connect with you or work with you and the podcaster, that you share the live interview alongside the links. And this is how you get a hold of us. You know what I mean? You got to think about the person that's listening.
Right. And it only takes 10 minutes. It's not something that you have to spend a lot of time on, but, whenever as a guest, if you're tagged on it, and that's something that I know a lot of podcasters look for specifically, is what is the guest going to do to help promote? And that's kind of a tool that, that whenever they go out and they look at their, if I'm going out and I'm looking at someone's social media before I agree to have them on the show, are they sharing other shows that they've been on? And are they promoting those things? Because that's how we can kind of cross-reference audiences and understand by doing that, you are helping build your audience even more, because if all of my guests do that, then people may subscribe to the show, and when we re-release or there's something in the title that they like, they're going to listen to you, they're going to pick that up. So there's a lot of advantages to doing that. It doesn't take long, but that is really important that as guests, they are also promoting the shows and just letting people know, hey, had the privilege of being on the show, really enjoyed it. And something I'll mention as well, we kind of talked earlier about that production piece. So that is one of the things that we do whenever, we're helping someone with their podcast, is we connect it on the back end to all of those social media sites and to all of the locations. So all of that is taken care of. So my show gets released generally on Monday mornings at 7:00. So Monday morning, by my drive in, I can listen to my own show. And I always listen to it just to make sure there's nothing that, in case I'm like, hey, wait a second, we need to go and make an adjustment. But, so the beauty of that is that as someone that's hosting the podcast, when you have someone that's handling those things on the back end, then I'm doing the same thing. Like usually on Tuesdays, I've had a chance to listen to it on Monday. On Tuesdays, that's whenever I go in and make sure to tag people on social media or reach out to them through an email, send them a link and thank them, just whatever it is. But as a guest, you want them doing the same thing. You want them promoting that show because, and the other thing is it's beneficial for their audience because there may have been something they said or a way that they said it on your show that was different than they had said it before. And so you want your audience absorbing as much of your content as they possibly can. That's how you build raving fans. And so when you go on someone's podcast and you go out and share it and your audience then listens to it, then that's going to help them just get more ingrained with who you are and what you believe in.
Yeah. Definitely. I love it. I love it. That's great. So what about content repurposing? Like, do you have any recommendations in terms of like repurposing the content from your interviews? Have you given any thought to that?
Yeah. So
kind of
we
a surprise
actually
question.
We actually do that a little bit. So one of the things that we offer is an online management course. And so I have used content in the podcasts to put out there in the management course. And I've even had a couple of guests that I've asked to come back on and do an interview that's specifically kind of exclusive to that audience.
Oh, cool.
And then we are working with a guest right now where we're going to do an event geographically in our local market. And as part of that event, we're going to simulcast in someone from the West Coast that was a guest on the show because of an area of expertise that they have. And so again, then they're going to get exposed to a completely new audience talking about their area of expertise. But yeah, we will occasionally use that. And then the guy that produces the show, whenever on the back end of that, he'll sometimes make quotes and comments, and he'll we'll put those things out as comments on social media again, where we can tag guests and things like that, just to help share more information about what they are sharing with our audience. So
I love it.
you can really find some great content through the shows. Yeah.
Definitely. I love that podcasts themselves are turning into these machines, like business tools, you know what I mean? It's not just a cool interview platform. It's not like just a radio show. There's like so much depth to it in terms of it being just a tool for business. So that's great. I love it.
It really is. Yeah, really is.
So last question, how can everybody find you? Where can they find you? What are what do you have going on? How can they work with you? How can they check you out?
Yeah. So one of the quickest and easiest ways is through KyleGorman.com, and Gorman is Gorman. And so that's a website I've got up that has some more information about me and about some of the speaking and coaching that I do. You can also check out our website, employerblueprint.com. And that speaks to some of the coaching and some of the talent acquisition programs that we have out there. But, and then I also encourage people, are welcome just to reach out to me directly on that Kyle Gorman website. You can use one of the contact forms. And if you have any questions or want to connect, you can find me on almost all social media sites. I'm Real Kyle Gorman on all of those, including LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there. And if you have any questions or just want some more information, I would be happy to do that. I love just the opportunity to speak to people about what they're doing and the way that they're impacting the world.
If they're starting a podcast and they need pointers, can they hit you up?
Yes, please hit me up on that. I'd love to help out with that. Maybe save you some of the heartache and challenges and sleepless nights. So yeah, if you have any questions about starting a podcast, hit me up. Again, go check out the KyleGorman.com site, contact me on there and just mention something about the podcast. And we can set up a Zoom conference and chat about all of that. I'd love to help out any issues, challenges, questions that you may have there.
That's really, really nice of you. Well, we appreciate you so much at ZippyContent. Sure. Thank you so much for being just such a valuable part of our network and accepting so many of our guests and being so easy to work with. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we work together for a long time.
Absolutely. Me too. Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate the people that you send our way and how easy you've been to work with. And thank you for having me on this show. It's very generous and very kind. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And awesome. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And don't jump away just yet. We can talk after the recording.
All right.